Hi everyone, it's Jay from Mitosu Crafts and we're independent Stampin' Up demonstrators based in the UK. Thank you for joining me today where I'll be showing you how I color the new stamps, This Little Piggy, with the watercolor pencils and using the basic black archival ink. For the 4 images, there's actually sentiments at the bottom of each one. So if you don't want to stamp those sentiments, you can use copy paper like I've just done or washi tape as well, just to mask off before you put your ink onto the stamp. With this first image, I'm just using a back and forth stroke using a Calypso Coral pencil. So imagine that you have a light source and add more color where you think the shadows would be. I tend to go over the images quite lightly at first just because you can add more color afterwards. Once you're happy with the coloring, use your Aqua Painters to spread the color around your image. The Aqua Painters is a set of 2. It comes with a medium and a large brush tip, and it allows you for an easy watercoloring for your projects. So for the second image, I am using the archival black ink again, masking off the sentiment with copy paper, as well as dabbing the tissue paper on top just for any excess ink on my project before I start coloring with the watercolor pencil. So again, I've started off at the edges, applying Calypso Coral and using the back and forth stroke as well. I tend to try and use the side of the pen if you are doing a larger area, so then at least there's no harsh lines on your images. So for this second image, I am introducing the Early Espresso watercolor pencil just for added intense shadows. You can add the Early Espresso color with the hatching stroke, so it's just short marks or even a small thin line just by the edge of your image to add these shadows. The watercolor pencils comes in 12 colors and I'm using the basic gray just to add shadow for the wings and add a bit more detail. I'll be using the old olive for the grass as well, going back onto the first image, doing some flicking motions as well to add a bit more grass at the bottom. Again, use your Aqua Painters to spread the color around. Always have a handy tissue or kitchen towel next to you when you are doing some watercoloring. It allows you to take off any excess water that forms at the tip of your brush and prevents the paper to overload with water. I have only used the normal Whisper White card for this video, but if you do want to try watercoloring for the first time, I suggest you get yourself a Shimmery White card or a watercolor paper just to make sure that your project turns out great. So going back to the first image, just using basic gray to add more shadows and to show you that you can add more color after you have done the Aqua Painters wash. Just make sure that the project is dry so then the color does apply onto the paper a bit better. So I'm adding Calypso Coral again just to make sure that the edges have more color and the image pop a little bit more. So if you do have time, it's worth doing this for your project, as to me it just looks much better with the added color. For the third image, we will add texture using the basic gray and the Early Espresso color. You've already saw me stamp it in the basic black archival. I will be using the blender pens for this as well to add texture, but maybe I should have used Memento ink pad, because if you do use blender pens with archival, and you overwork it, it tends to bleed. So if you are going to try this, maybe use water-based ink pad and make sure that it is dry before you use the blender pens. Because we'll be adding texture later on, I'm just roughly doing some cross-hatching marking, uh, concentrating more on the edges of the image for where the shadows will be. I'm also turning my project around just to make it easier for me to do this cross-hatching. So using the blender pens, um, to add the texture, you can actually stipple the blender pen, and for any large areas as well, use the side of the blender pen to make it much more quicker to spread the color around. Um, for anyone not used to using the blender pen, this is a great way to use it because you want texture, you don't have to be neat about it. As you can see there, I tried to do it with the grass as well, using the side of the blender pens and flicking it up. You can see me adding Calypso Coral and basic black on the image to add more interest and darker shadows. I'll be using the blender pens again on this, so I'm not really too careful with how I apply these colors. For the grass, I tried to do the scumbling technique, which is going over with circular marks on your paper, but I think I was too hard on the paper, so you can see more of the marks there, which it doesn't matter for this project, but if you are going to use it for future projects, maybe just apply it lightly so you will have um, a better way of blending with your scumbling technique. So there we have it, the three piggies in watercolor pencils using Aqua Painters and the blender pens. I hope you have learned a bit more on how to use the watercolor pencils by Stampin' Up. Join me next week to see what I have created with these colored images. Thanks again for stopping by. Until next time, bye!